Hello, my friend. Before we begin today's episode, I want you to stop for just a moment and answer one simple question. How many years have you been learning English? Maybe 3 years, maybe 5, maybe even 10. Now, let me ask you something even more important. After all those years, can you speak English confidently, without stopping, without translating, without feeling nervous? If your answer is not yet, then today's episode might completely change the way you think about learning English. Because today, I'm not going to teach you another grammar rule. I'm not going to give you 50 new vocabulary words, and I'm definitely not going to tell you to memorize another textbook. Instead, I'm going to show you why most people stay stuck even after studying English for years. And the surprising part is this: the problem isn't your English. The problem is how you've been learning it. Think about this for a second. Imagine two people. The first person studies grammar for 2 hours every day. The second person listens to English podcasts, reads simple articles, speaks to themselves, and practices for just 30 minutes every single day. Now, who do you think becomes fluent first? Most people would probably choose the first person. But in real life, the second person usually wins. Why? Because language isn't built by collecting information. Language is built by creating habits. And that is the biggest misunderstanding about learning English. Many learners believe that more studying automatically creates better speaking. But that's not how the brain works. Let me explain. Imagine you want to learn how to swim. You buy books about swimming. You watch videos. You memorize every swimming technique. You even understand how professional swimmers move their arms and legs. But you never enter the water. 1 year later, will you become a good swimmer? Of course not, because knowledge without practice changes nothing. English works exactly the same way. Many people know thousands of English words. They understand grammar. They can even pass difficult English exams. But when someone suddenly asks, "How was your day?" everything disappears. Their mind becomes silent. Their confidence disappears. Their heart starts beating faster, and suddenly, they forget even the simplest words. Why does this happen? Because speaking is not only knowledge. Speaking is a skill, and every skill follows the same rule. You improve by doing, not by knowing. Now, let me ask you another question. Have you ever watched an English movie and understood almost everything, but when someone asked you to explain what happened, you couldn't find the words? If that has happened to you, you're not alone. Millions of English learners experience exactly the same thing. And here's the interesting part. Your brain already knows the answer. It simply cannot access it fast enough. Think of your brain like a giant library. Every word you learn, every sentence you hear, every conversation you listen to becomes another book on the shelf. But during a real conversation, your brain doesn't have time to search every shelf. It needs instant access. That's why fluent speakers sound effortless, not because they know more words, but because they can find those words immediately. And here's the secret. That speed doesn't come from memorizing. It comes from repetition. It comes from hearing English again and again and again. Until your brain no longer searches, it simply remembers. Most learners spend their time asking, "How many new words should I learn today?" Very few ask, "How many English sentences did I actually hear today?" That question changes everything. Because listening is where speaking begins. Every sentence you hear today becomes a sentence you might speak tomorrow. Every conversation you listen to teaches your brain another pattern. Your ears train your mouth long before your mouth speaks. Think about a baby learning language. A baby doesn't start speaking on the first day. For many months, the baby simply listens. Thousands and thousands of sentences every single day. The brain quietly collects sounds, patterns, rhythm, pronunciation without anyone noticing. Then, one day, almost like magic, the first words appear. People celebrate that moment, but they forget something important. Speaking started months before, through listening. Exactly the same thing happens when you learn English. Your progress is invisible long before it becomes visible. That is why many learners quit too early. They practice for 2 weeks, then they say, "I'm not improving." But language doesn't grow overnight. It grows quietly. Imagine planting a tree. Would you dig it up every morning just to check whether the roots are growing? Of course not. Because real growth happens underground. Language grows the same way. Your confidence grows quietly. Your pronunciation improves quietly. Your vocabulary expands quietly. And then, one ordinary day, you suddenly realize you're speaking faster than before. You're understanding more than before. You're thinking less and communicating more. People call that talent. It isn't talent. It's consistency. Now, let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel wanted to become fluent in English. Every Monday he promised himself, "This week will be different." He downloaded new apps, bought new books, saved new YouTube videos, watched motivational content, created beautiful study schedules. Everything looked perfect. For 3 days. Then life became busy. Work, family, responsibilities, and suddenly the plan disappeared. The next Monday, he started again. New notebook, new schedule, new motivation. Same result. Does that sound familiar? Maybe not Daniel. Maybe you. Here's what finally changed Daniel's English forever. He stopped trying to study more. Instead, he decided to make English impossible to avoid. Every morning, while brushing his teeth, he listened to English. During breakfast, English. Driving to work, English. Walking home, English. Before sleeping, 10 minutes of English reading. No huge goals, no impossible schedule. Just small habits, repeated every day. 30 days later, his English wasn't perfect, but something incredible happened. He no longer needed motivation, because habits replaced motivation. And habits are far more powerful. Motivation disappears. Habits stay. That is the difference between people who dream about fluency and people who eventually achieve it.
One of the biggest lies people believe is this: I don't have enough time. Really? Let me ask you something. How many minutes did you spend on social media yesterday? 10? 30? Maybe 1 hour. Maybe more. Now imagine replacing just 20 minutes of that time with English. Not grammar exercises, not difficult textbooks. Simply listening. Imagine listening while making coffee, while cooking dinner, while cleaning your room, while waiting in line. Those small moments already exist. You don't need to create more time. You simply need to use the time you already have. That is exactly how successful language learners think. They don't ask, "When can I study?" They ask, "How can English become a part of my normal life?" That one question changes everything. Because once English becomes a lifestyle, it stops feeling like homework. And when learning no longer feels like work, consistency becomes easy. Now, let's talk about something almost every learner struggles with: confidence. Many people believe confidence comes first. They think, when I become confident, then I'll start speaking. But confidence doesn't work like that. Imagine someone standing outside a gym. They say, I'll start lifting weights after I become stronger. Does that make sense? Of course not. Strength comes from lifting, not before lifting. Confidence works exactly the same way. You become confident by speaking, not before speaking. The first conversation feels uncomfortable. The second conversation feels slightly easier. The 10th conversation feels normal. The 100th conversation feels natural. That's how confidence is built, one sentence at a time. Another mistake many learners make is comparing themselves to fluent speakers. They watch someone speaking perfect English and immediately think, I'll never sound like that. But you're comparing your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20. That's unfair. Every fluent speaker you admire today was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once felt nervous. Every smooth conversation started with awkward sentences. Nobody begins at the finish line. Progress always starts small. Now, imagine this. You decide to improve your English for 1 full year, not by studying 5 hours every Saturday, but by practicing 30 minutes every single day. Which approach do you think changes your life more? The answer is obvious. Small actions repeated consistently always beat big actions done occasionally. This is true for fitness, it's true for business, it's true for relationships, and it's absolutely true for learning English. Your brain doesn't reward intensity, it rewards repetition. The sentences you repeat become the sentences you remember. The words you hear every day become the words you naturally use. This is why listening is so powerful. Not because you're studying, but because you're training your brain without even realizing it. So, before you ask yourself, how can I speak better English? Ask a better question. How can I hear more English today? Because tomorrow's speaking begins with today's listening. And once you understand that, everything starts to change. Now, I want you to think about one more question. Why do some people become fluent even though they started later than you? Have you ever wondered about that? You meet someone who has been learning English for only 2 years, yet they speak with confidence. Meanwhile, someone else studies for 10 years and still struggles to introduce themselves. How is that possible? The answer has nothing to do with talent. It has everything to do with the way they practice. Most struggling learners collect information. Successful learners create experiences. There is a huge difference. One learner memorizes vocabulary. Another learner uses that vocabulary in real conversations. One learner studies grammar rules. Another learner tells stories. One learner waits until everything is perfect. The other starts speaking immediately. Who improves faster? The answer is obvious. Because language was never designed to stay inside your notebook. Language was created to connect people. The moment you understand that, your learning changes forever. Now, let's talk about one habit that changed my perspective completely. Thinking in English. Not translating, not memorizing, simply thinking. At first, this sounds impossible. Many learners say, Evan, my English isn't good enough. I understand. But let me ask you something. When you first learned to ride a bicycle, did you immediately ride perfectly? No. You moved a little, you lost your balance,
you try it again. Thinking in English follows the same process. You don't begin with long conversations, you begin with tiny thoughts. When you wake up, look outside. The weather looks beautiful today. When you open the refrigerator, I need more milk. When you're walking, that dog is running. When you're hungry, I'm ready for lunch. Simple thoughts, simple words, simple sentences. That is how fluency begins. Not with difficult grammar, not with advanced vocabulary, with ordinary moments, repeated every day. Here's something fascinating about the human brain. The brain always chooses the path it uses most often. If you translate every sentence, your brain becomes better at translating. If you think directly in English, your brain becomes better at thinking in English. You become what you repeatedly practice. That's why your habits matter more than your goals. Anyone can set a goal. Very few people build daily habits. Goals inspire you. Habits transform you. Imagine two learners. The first one says, "This year, I want to become fluent." The second one says, "Every morning, I'll listen to English for 20 minutes." Who succeeds? Usually, the second learner, because goals tell you where to go. Habits take you there. That is a lesson that applies to everything in life, not only English, business, health, relationships. Success always hides inside daily habits, and English is no different. So instead of chasing fluency, start chasing consistency, because fluency is simply the reward for showing up every single day. But there is another mistake, a mistake almost every English learner makes. They wait for the perfect moment. They say, "I'll start speaking after I learn more vocabulary. I'll speak after I finish this grammar book. I'll start next month. I'll practice when I'm less busy." Does any of that sound familiar? Here's the truth. The perfect moment never comes. There will always be another excuse, another responsibility, another reason to wait. And while you're waiting, someone else is improving. Not because they're smarter, not because they have more talent, simply because they started. Action always beats preparation. Think about driving a car. You can watch driving videos for years. You can memorize every traffic rule. You can understand every road sign. But until you sit behind the steering wheel, you're not a driver. Speaking English follows the exact same principle. Knowledge prepares you. Practice transforms you. Now, let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah understood English very well. She watched Netflix without subtitles. She listened to English podcasts every day. She could read books. She knew thousands of words. But every time someone asked her a simple question, she became nervous. Her heart started beating faster. Her hands became cold. Her mind went completely blank. Why? Because she had trained herself to receive English, but never to produce it. One evening, Sarah made a decision. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated. She simply picked up her phone, opened the voice recorder, and spoke for 5 minutes. About anything. Her breakfast, her work, her dreams, her family. The first recording was painful. She stopped every few seconds. She repeated the same words. She couldn't finish many sentences. When she listened to her own voice, she almost deleted the recording. But she didn't. The next morning, she recorded another 5 minutes, then another and another. After 2 weeks, she noticed something interesting. She wasn't speaking perfectly, but she was speaking longer. After 1 month, she stopped translating so often. After 2 months, she no longer feared hearing her own voice. And one day, during an unexpected conversation, she answered naturally. Not because she suddenly became fluent, but because speaking had become familiar. That is how confidence grows, quietly, almost invisibly. Until one day, you realize you're doing something that once felt impossible. Many learners ask me, "How long will it take?" I always answer the same way. The better question is, how often will you practice? Because improvement isn't measured by weeks, it's measured by repetitions. One sentence becomes 10. 10 conversations become 100. 100 small habits become a completely different person. This is why I always tell people, don't chase perfection, chase progress. Progress never asks you to be perfect. It only asks you to keep moving. Every conversation makes the next conversation easier. Every mistake makes the next sentence better. Every day you continue, you become someone your past self would admire. And one morning, without even realizing it, you'll wake up, start thinking in English, answer questions naturally, understand conversations faster, and smile. Because you'll remember the person who once believed fluency was impossible. That person will no longer exist.
There is one final lesson. And in my opinion, it is the lesson that changes everything. English is not a school subject. It is a life skill. Many people spend years studying English, but they only use it during English class. Then they close the book, leave the classroom, and return to their native language. Imagine going to the gym only once a week and expecting incredible results. Would that work? Probably not. Because improvement comes from frequency, not intensity. English works exactly the same way. The people who become fluent don't only study English, they live with English. English becomes part of their mornings, part of their afternoons, part of their evenings. When they cook, they think in English. When they drive, they listen in English. When they write notes, sometimes they write them in English. Little by little, English stops feeling foreign. It starts feeling familiar. And familiarity creates confidence. Now, let me give you a challenge. Not for next month, not for next year. Starting today. For the next 30 days, do 4 simple things. First, listen to English every single day. Even 20 minutes is enough. Not because 20 minutes is magical, but because consistency is. Second, think in English. Don't wait until your English becomes perfect. Start with tiny thoughts. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I need to buy groceries. Simple thoughts repeated hundreds of times become natural thinking. Third, speak every day. Even if you're alone, describe your room. Talk about your plans. Retell a movie. Pretend you're answering an interview question. Your goal isn't perfection. Your goal is production. Because language grows when you produce it. And finally, be patient. This may be the hardest step. Our world teaches us to expect quick results, instant messages, instant food, instant answers. But fluency is never instant. It grows quietly, just like trust, just like friendship, just like success. And one day, you'll notice something beautiful. You'll stop translating. You'll stop searching for every word. You'll stop worrying about every small mistake. Instead, you'll simply communicate. Naturally, comfortably, confidently. And that's the moment you'll realize you were never trying to become a perfect English speaker. You were becoming someone who isn't afraid to use English anymore. Remember this. The goal isn't to sound like everyone else. The goal is to express yourself clearly, to connect with people, to share your ideas, to understand the world, and to let the world understand you. English isn't about showing how smart you are. It's about creating opportunities. One conversation can change your career. One meeting can change your future. One friendship can change your life. You never know which conversation will become the most important conversation you've ever had. That's why your practice today matters more than you think. Not because of tomorrow's lesson, but because of tomorrow's opportunity. So, stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting for perfection. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start today. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. And one day,
Without even realizing it, you'll become the person who once seemed impossible to become. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode helped you even a little, share it with someone who's learning English. And if you'd like more episodes like this, join me again right here on English Unleashed. Until next time, keep listening, keep thinking, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.